Welcome to the Truth Over Facts podcast. I'm your host, Dylan, and my co-host, Ron Dog.
What's up, Dill baby? How's it
What's
going?
up, bud?
Nothing much, dog. The world is falling apart, just as you've called.
Yeah, and we were literally just had this on the last episode about a financial Titanic, and here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to be like Fabrizio's bitch ass and get shot because
Yep.
somebody pushed us into the problem. But do you want to talk about that, or do you want to talk about how the January 6th committee released, or Carlson released all the video evidence or whatnot? It's not even fucking evidence, but it's just the shaman or whatever. He's getting like a personal tour and shit.
The
You know what I mean?
QAnon shaman, yeah.
Yeah. I guess we could talk about that first.
Yeah, we could talk about that for a little bit, dog. Yeah, I don't know. The media kind of just overreacted, it seems like, from what you see now to what they
Well,
painted him to be. But
well, that's just it. I mean, it's kind of like, we'll eventually talk about this whole banking crisis and shit. But it's the equivalent of like, what how does it absolve you from like trying to kill fucking like politicians and police? Like that's what I don't get about like the whole entire like January 6th kind of like, oh, the shaman got like a personal tour by the cops.
yeah, come on
Okay,
in,
so
come
like
on in.
yeah, come on in.
Let's
Okay,
show
so
you
like
around.
yeah. And that's what I mean. Like that's what doesn't add up to me. Like I would love to agree with that, but that doesn't deny the fact you try to kill fucking people. Like you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? It's kind of like, well, the bank, its vault was open, and they kind of showed me around the bank, but they didn't show me around the bank vault. But I went in the bank vault and I took some money, but I didn't do anything wrong with it. I didn't spend the money. I actually just put it back.
Yeah.
Like that's the stupidity of this. Like
I
when I
just
heard
I
it,
just sniffed the bills and then I
yeah, I just licked the bills and shit,
oh,
and I just
smells
put
so
all the money back.
fresh. Mm.
Like that's what I don't understand about like it's kind of like similar to how like God, I keep saying like and shit, but it really is. It's just like the fucking Russia shit. Oh, this is a smoking gun. This is gonna, put Trump away and shit. And it's like, what who cares? Like
Mhm.
it doesn't, it was all fake to begin with. You know what I mean? Like why do we have to like both sides at this point? They're so desperate, right? To like
Yeah.
distract everybody on everything with the UFOs, the fucking banks are collapsing now, the FTX crypto shit collapse. They're trying everything to pull every single rabbit out the hat, but the rabbit is dead. It's not even it's just a turd, and everybody can
Mhm.
just realize it now. Like, what are you trying to do here?
Well, let's just get this straight here. Um, you know, with the new footage and everything that they released, I mean,
40,000 hours.
yeah,
Hey, like,
whatever.
but we picked
Besides that, I mean, it was still really chaotic, dude.
right.
I mean, it doesn't really change I mean, that guy's case, it probably changes a lot of people's cases, like individually, like people that were apprehended, and then thrown in jail. It
Right.
probably changes a lot of, well, I don't know if it changes their cases anymore, but um, withholding all of that from like lawyers and judges, and then just throwing a lock and key away.
Yeah. I mean, they always got to make an
That's
example out of
wrong.
anybody.
That's wrong. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't call it an insurrection. It was like a riot. I mean,
Fucking thing was an
it
insurrection.
it, it was still chaotic, dude. I mean, no, I mean, like it wasn't like citizens were shooting up like cops or just running in there to.
They were. They're
What cops do
breaking
you know of that
windows and
got
shit.
shot, dog? I didn't know of any cops
But
that got
here's my
shot.
point though, being of it, is it doesn't matter anymore, okay? Because both sides have justified the anarchy, right? No different than like how, you know, all it takes is a little bit of kindling, and that's what part of the fourth attorney is talking about. It doesn't fucking matter the message on anything anymore. It just takes this little bit of kindling, and you get a little bit of fucking people behind it, and they go with it because they're angry. Because they're angry at the system, but they don't understand like who to actually be angry at. So they just start tearing shit down. Doesn't matter if it was the cities or the fucking capital. It's the system, right? It's no longer functioning or working for anybody. So instead of people just like looking at one another and be like, you know what? I think the fucking problem is like the politicians and the bankers and the people that actually run the system, right?
Well,
That
that's
reap the
just it. The
rewards of
problem
it.
the problem with January 6th now is the politicians. They flat out lied
Right.
during their committee. Um, especially Liz Cheney and Adam Kissinger.
Yeah.
I think in the end of it, they were just so butthurt about Trump.
Yeah, because he's an outsider and he shits on the parade. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like you have to understand throughout history, the outsider usually is created to be a hero, but by the time he fucking dies or leaves, he ends up being like a mass murdering villain. Like, you know what I mean? And why do you think Americans love villains so much? We love the villains like in comic books and shit. We love the villains more than we love the heroes. We like them because like we actually perceive that what they're actually doing is right. And the whole entire January 6th thing, it's kind of like, oh well, it's our taxpayer dollars, so we get to enter it. That's perfectly true. But the minute you start breaking windows, literally trying to kill police officers, and at the same time trying to hang Mike Pence and kill the okay, so like let's run a little scenario through here. What would happen if they actually got to Mike Pence? You think they would just play fucking patty cake with him? No,
No,
they'd
dude,
kill
they'd
his
be
ass.
dead.
So how can you say it's not an insurrection when they're literally going to go
Well,
there and
I
kill
don't
him?
I don't I don't know. I didn't look that far ahead, but what I was saying is if they got a hold of Pence, they
Any of
wouldn't
them,
even
they would
they
have killed
wouldn't even
him.
be able to because they would be outgunned.
They weren't
They would
outgunned,
die
but the fact
trying.
of the matter
I mean, they
is
would be
that
dead.
there was a lot of, and this is kind of like, the systematic mistrust of the government, right? Through like Waco and what was the cabin one that we talked about,
Oh,
the
damn it.
green or whatnot.
Oh, damn you.
We had talked about it before,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm talking
yeah,
about the
yeah.
overall like systematic erosion of trust in the system, right? So, you know, Republicans and Trump supporters, when the Democrats were destroying cities, they called them anarchists,
Hmm.
right? Even Trump said, "Oh, these are Antifa, they're anarchists and shit like that." But the minute you start to do it, you're doing it out of patriotism. It flip flops either way, right? Because it's like the Democrats perceived it as patriotism too, to stop fascism, as if you want. It's opposite sides of the spectrum, but they're both wrong, right?
Hmm. Yes.
So with the whole entire thing with like, oh, it wasn't an insurrection. I've even had a conversation with a guy that I worked with previously, and he was like, well, the cops let him in. And I said, that makes it even fucking worse. Like, you're trying to see, this is what I'm getting at. And I won't mention his name, but I was just kind of like, this is what I'm getting at. You're starting to justify because the other side justified it. And this is where you have kind of like the degradation of humanity, where like, well, it's okay to kill because they killed. You know what I mean? And I'm like, me being the type of person that I am, I'm like, well, okay, well, how's that been working out for you? It just makes you feel better, but it just destroys the overall empire.
Hmm.
So with the whole entire multiple hours of like all of that shit, it doesn't get rid of anything that's already been done, right? But now
Yeah.
you're trying to justify it as like, oh, well, they were giving them a tour and shit. And it's like, okay, but why aren't those cops held accountable then? Why aren't we going out of our way to hold those cops? Not even that. What was the timing of all of this, right? If we have 40,000 hours, I'm pretty sure I could use YouTube and like cut and edit the shit to make it look like, oh yeah, there's Dylan taking a shit in the Capitol. And I'm just like waving out of a door or something. But it's just one of those things with me where they're like, you have the mainstream media just constantly like berating you with bullshit of like, see, this is like this, they all need to get out of jail now because this gets rid of their whole entire narrative of like, this is all planned. The cops are showing them around and shit like that. It's kind of like, who gives a fuck? They weren't supposed to be there to begin with. Oh, well, they're taxpayers. Okay, well, I'm a taxpayer. I don't want you to fucking be in there, right? It's a democracy. We're supposed to vote on this shit.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't vote on it. You just fucking went and did it.
Yeah.
No different than how like the left leaning side just automatically felt like burning down shit.
Yeah, but in
It's
a
the
way, to
justification
some
that it's
people, justice wasn't
right.
it wasn't served. It wasn't served right.
Right. So, like I had this conversation with the guy at work. I said, oh, I'm an anarchist and shit. And he goes, okay, well, I don't understand that. And I said, well, you're an anarchist, aren't you? Or I said, you're an anarchist. And he goes, no, I'm not. And I said, well, you're a Trump supporter, aren't you? He goes, yeah. I said, right. So you're anarchist. I said, you're no different than how the Democrats and shit like that were burning down cities. No justice, no peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get justice when you voted? No. So no peace. So you're
Mm-hmm.
anarchist. I just skipped to the fucking next step before before voting and shit because I knew it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But it's ultimately the destruction of trust in the system and the justification of the no justice, no peace that ultimately destroys all empires. You overexpand the military, you start fighting meaningless, endless wars, right? You keep expanding while the interior of the empire uh,
Depletes
dilapidates and
itself.
yeah, just eats itself alive, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually it just all comes collapsing down and shit. It's like they just recently saw that video of all the migrants and shit caught a rumor on Twitter or something, so they all started bum rushing the fucking
That was
the
yesterday,
border.
wasn't it?
Yeah, they all
Yeah.
started bum rushing it. Well, pretty soon it's gonna be like fucking Mexico. So I don't understand why you'd be running into here when, oh, well, we're gonna give you free college. There ain't gonna be no colleges left.
No.
You know what I mean? Like this is where like they're trying to distract everybody by just creating more fucking chaos. But
Mm-hmm.
this is where I said before, like the only way to control chaos is to create the next chaotic thing. And that's what they're trying to do, but they're creating so much chaos that they can't control the next fucking step.
Overlapping chaos.
Yeah, chaos theory. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big firm believer in chaos theory. The more you try to control something, the less in control you become.
And it's like there's always something new every day. Like there's
Yeah,
always like a new derailment that's being talked about.
right. But it's all man-made, and it's also like man-made through ignorance and just stupidity and shit. Like the two knuckleheads you got behind you, they're the most incompetent fucking idiots in the world, but yet they run the money supply.
No, they're not. They're the J&J economic vaccine.
Right. And then you got Jim Cramer who was telling everybody a month
Oh,
ago to buy
jeez.
fucking Silicon Valley. Yeah, I put all my this is the same knucklehead retard that told everybody to buy Bear Stearns before it went bankrupt. Like, but that's how the system works. Like now you have no trust in anything anymore, right?
That guy looks like a nervous wreck on TV.
He does. He gets his little whiny voice and shit, and then he's like,
Yeah,
"What?
he's like a
The
nervous
banks are
wreck.
solid. The banks are solid. Get your money out."
Yeah.
As he's calling his buddies, yeah, I got my money out. But the whole entire banking, after the whole entire January 6th shit, I'm just kind of like over it. I'm like, okay, it doesn't absolve you of any sort of like guilt about what you did, and then like Trump comes out and like, this absolves, this justifies like Ashley Babbitt was murdered and shit. I'm like, she jumped through there. If I was one of them fucking people, I would have shot her ass back through the window and shit.
Well, the thing is that that guy shot her, but he
You're trying
had
to kill me.
but the thing is
How is
that
that
they
any
were they
different than
were
your own
like
household?
police like behind her and off to the side of her.
Oh, she got pushed.
But like it's like, well, why how are you gonna shoot with your own people like right there, like with your own officers right over there?
But that's what I mean. It's chaos.
Chaos. Yeah.
Yeah. when chaos happens, your neighbor will become your worst enemy and shit, because that's why, like, if you have a bad fucking neighbor that you hate and you built a fence because you didn't want to see him anymore, you think he's gonna, very first person he's gonna try and take out is you and shit because you pissed him off, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, you're supposed to build a good relationship with your neighbors. What does it say in the Bible?
Love your neighbor as yourself, dog.
Yeah, love thy neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what it says in the Bible about not forgiving people? It's against it. Yeah. But
Roy Munson.
yeah, Roy Munson. But this is where, like, you need to start relying and start creating like a little trust of group of people that you trust, like with your life and shit like that. Because like I said, like when the banks start to go and shit, they're gonna try to create a crisis even bigger than COVID and shit. And that's what I'm saying is that, like,
I think the banking crisis is bigger than COVID.
it is
And
because it affects
it
everybody.
will be. I mean, it's just started.
Yeah. And
Well, I
now
mean,
this is,
publicly,
yeah. I said
started.
that before on the last podcast. I think we're
With
like,
the bank runs and everything. I mean, the last time we saw a bank run was in Russia at the beginning of the Ukraine-Russia war with people
yep,
in Russia.
everybody started pulling their fucking money out. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of those things where the average American is just dumbfounded, doesn't keep any cash. But that's
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason why they try to do a reset, right?
Mm-hmm.
They did a reset in 1945. America was the global world currency, the SWIFT system. Any sort of exchange had to be done in dollars. Petro system,
Yep.
petrodollar. Once they ran that shit aground and it didn't work, they just de-link it from something else and just print even more money. And now they printed their money. This is the Rubicon now, where this is where we're going to go into hyperinflation. How are we going to pay for all these bailouts?
And I don't think, when you talk about the petrodollar and then you talk about um these globalists, how they talk about being environmentalists.
Yeah.
Maybe the real reason why they want to be environmentalists is because they want to get away from the petrodollar and eliminate it in its entirety. And that way they're not dependent on that anymore.
Right. They're just covering their own asses. That's all they're doing. I
Hmm.
mean, if you're Saudi Arabia, why would you want fucking electric vehicles when
Yeah.
your number one
You're making
commodity and all your wealth
oil.
is in
Yeah.
oil?
Just
Right. So why
imagine
why
if
would you
th-
help us?
like
Right.
do you think they even realize that that's exactly what they're trying to do? Like
Yeah, but that's why.
they want to eliminate the production of oil. They want to make oil completely useless and just replace it with batteries. But I think there's something that there's not enough cobalt in the world
And
to
lithium and shit.
to make all these endless amounts of batteries that
Right.
these people want to produce, or these
Okay, so
corporations.
like let's say for instance shipping cargo, right? On the big giant cargo ships. That shit and cruise ships pollute so much more. Are you gonna make those electric? No.
No.
You can't. Like it, it's just another scam to get people to drop their guard, to put their stupid fucking money into stupid shit, and then they'll pull the plug on it. And then they'll just be like, whoops, just like how they are now with the banks. These
It's
banks,
like it's like looking at a still picture with blinders on. You're only looking at one picture and you're not
it's
looking
like
at the
that
whole entire
kaleidoscope
picture.
old school one where you just flip the thing, and the Mickey Mouse one, I think,
Hmm.
the goggles, where you
Yeah.
just flip the next picture in.
Yes, exactly.
When we
Yes.
were kids. That's what it's like. But with the whole entire banking crisis right now, I put it on Facebook and shit, but I said, "Oh, you think it's fucking bad now?" I said, "Somebody was underwriting all those bad loans, and loans are always insured." So this is where you're going to see, like in the banking crisis of '08, you had AIG, American Insurance Corporation, or what the hell was it? America Insurance, some shit. AIG. I forget what the
Yeah.
G stands for. But AIG insured all that fucking bad debt and all that fraud. And it infected everything. Teachers' pensions and shit like that. That's what I'm waiting on. I'm waiting on a big giant insurance. Somebody out there, it might even be Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, right?
American International Group
Yeah, there you go. America International Group.
is an American multinational finance and insurance corporation with operations in more than 80 countries and jurisdictions. As of January 1st, 2019, AIG companies employ 49,600 people.
Yep, you're gonna have something like that, and I'm willing to bet you're gonna have.
And their stock price went down minus 5.79%.
Yep, well, it's already starting because everybody's starting to figure out, well, who the hell is insuring all these banks and shit with these bad loans? Like the reason why Silicon Valley Bank went bankrupt was because they put too many of their fucking eggs in one basket.
By buying
They
all
were
these bonds.
Yeah, all these treasuries they were. Like last year they bought a bunch of treasuries at 2% and now they're
Mm-hmm.
at like 5%. So you just lost all a shit ton of money.
They were
Something like
encouraged by the government to do so, to
yeah,
to
yeah,
to
because the
to
government
buy
puts a
them.
gun to their head and says, "Hey, you need to loan out all this fucking funny money or you can buy all of our fucking stupid money." So you hand out monopoly money or you buy our monopoly money. Which one is
Mm-hmm.
it?
Yes.
So that and all these California banks, just like the savings and loan crisis in
Mm-hmm.
the 80s and 90s and shit, that one cost 125 billion over like 10 years to bail out all those fucking shit banks. But the main point was the savings and loan crisis was a lot of California and Texas banks
Mm-hmm.
because they
Yes.
had real estate and they
Mm-hmm.
not only that, Texas had a lot of real estate, but California had a lot of rich people. FDI
Mm-hmm.
insured was only insured up to $100,000 before 2008. After
Now
2008,
now it's at $250,000.
now it's essentially all your deposits are guaranteed, even if you're a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
They just created a big giant safety net, even bigger than the last one, right? It's like you get a garbage bag, you fill it up full of shit, and then the bottom falls out of it. So then you get a bigger garbage bag to catch the fucking, you double
Yeah.
bag.
You get the contractor bag, dog.
Yeah, the contractor bag, and then that breaks, and then you get a double contractor bag, and it just keeps piling up with more shit, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like you got about 6 months before shit really starts getting really scary. Where like I said before, you're gonna be at the restaurant or at the bar or some shit like that, and your credit card or your debit card isn't gonna work, and
And
you're
then
gonna
it
think to yourself, okay, that's never happened or whatever. Pull out a second one. It's not going to work. Hey,
and
you
then
got
you
cash?
catch yourself doing the dishes in the back because you couldn't pay your meal.
Yeah. But it won't be like that. It'll be you, and then everybody will start to look.
Everybody in the same room.
Yep. You'll look around at the restaurant or the bar, and you'll realize like nobody's is working, and then you'll be like, "Well, what the fuck?" And that's what I mean. Like they'll have to lock the whole system down because there's essentially a digital run on everything.
Yep.
You know, the
Digital
silicon.
currency is implemented with a social credit score.
Yeah, and that's where I think
That's where we're
they're
headed.
yeah, they're just trying to backstop everybody. They're trying to slow down the collapse as much as they can by telling everybody like, "Oh, well, we're gonna backstop your deposits and shit." Well, I thought they were
Do
only
you
deposit.
think that has anything to do with it being an upcoming election cycle?
Yeah, it's similar to just like 2008, right? 2007, the system broke. Um, Chuck Prince, he was the CEO of Citigroup at that time. He had a
Okay.
famous line saying, "As long as the music is playing, you got to dance." But by the time he said that, the music stopped. So nobody knew who was holding the bag, right? Or the hot potato, as if you want to put it.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of 2007, two hedge funds completely collapsed in Bear Stearns because they were gambling big time. One hedge fund, one of the guys lost like $9 billion in fucking a year. It's like one of the worst trades of all time, kind of shit. 9 billion, one guy, right?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
one trader, nine billion is bigger than some country's GDP,
Yeah.
right? So
That's
like this guy
insane.
lost like Alaska's fucking GDP. You know what I mean? In one trade. So in 2007 in the summer, this is where you could kind of see the cracks are starting to, the dominoes are starting to fall, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But the government's kind of like, everything's fine. What are you talking about? Just pour a little bit more gasoline on the fire. Yeah. So 2007 in the summer, two hedge funds collapsed that were up to their eyeballs in subprime mortgages, shit mortgages, and they bet heavy on it. They leveraged themselves up. Well, they went bust. Then in like August, I want to say, of 2007, you could kind of see like the Federal Reserve and the rest of the government kind of figured out like, oh shit, the debt bomb popped, you know.
Yeah.
Inflation started going up from like 2007 to 2008. It went from like $40 a barrel to a fucking $150 a barrel in 1 year because they were trying to print all this money
Yeah.
to try to backstop everything. Well, it was an election year, so they were just trying to kick the shit down the road long enough till the next dummy came in, but it fell apart, right?
Yes.
In January of 2008, they did stimulus checks to get the economy going. Well, that just kicked off inflation even more and shit, right? Kind of like how they
Yeah.
did before, like California is doing right now.
And it's fantastic on your taxes at the end of the year.
Yeah, because you took all that money and they
Yeah.
got
And now
tax
you
the
got to
piss
pay
out of
that shit back.
it. Yeah.
Hey, thanks for the money I got to pay back.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
keep it in your
remember?
savings.
Yeah, we gave you all this money. Oh, yeah, we're gonna need that back and then some.
Just
Oh,
keep it in your
cool. Yeah.
savings so you can pay it back next year.
Yeah, we gave you 3,000. We're gonna need 6,000 back. So that's kind of what's going on right now. You know, I said for the last 2021 and 2022, I said there's a fucking banking crisis manifesting because they gave out all this cheap fucking money. They didn't know where it went. Just like, you know, during the previous crisis, they gave out all these loans to fucking people they knew weren't going to pay the shit back, or they didn't know where there was all this money sloshing around. They didn't know where it went. Could go into auto loans, shit like that.
And then a lot of it was fraudulent.
Yeah, most of it was because
Mm-hmm.
when you don't have to pay your student loan debt back, that automatically artificially creates a artificial debt to income ratio.
Mm-hmm.
So when you apply for a mortgage, you apply for a credit card, you apply for a car loan. That's why the
Mm-hmm.
government is trying to backstop the student loan still shit.
Mm-hmm.
The smart thing to do would to return student loan debt because it would slow people down. They'd stop buying shit. They have no more disposable income. Like I said before, how many people in the 3 years you haven't had to pay your student loan, how much have you paid? None.
And maybe America wouldn't have to default on their loans.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, remember I just said in the last episode, the fourth turning, you know, the government won't be able to service its debt no more
Mm-hmm.
because of higher interest rates. This is why those two schmucks behind you are in the bond market right now buying bonds
Mm-hmm.
because the whole entire system is hooked on cheap credit, auto loans. You're going to have a financial credit, and it's already manifesting, right? The cracks are already there, but that's just for the companies. Now the companies can't fund themselves. This is why this is like a big giant contagion in the banking system. They call it the regional banking system because it's kind of like state by state and kind of
Yeah.
shit like that. They essentially don't want the big investment banks, the JP Morgans and the Bank of Americas to go bust, but eventually they will because it's a ripple effect. If these regional banks were giving out all these loans to these bullshit companies like Roku that don't make any money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Etsy, I think, was another one. A bunch of them.
Another one I think was Roblox.
Yeah,
Right?
Roblox. A lot
Yeah,
of these
Roblox. Yeah.
companies don't make any money. They just have the ability to keep taking out debt.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute they raise interest rates, the dirt starts going in the hole and then
Yeah.
they start getting buried.
Mm-hmm.
So that same shit is going on, but this is where it spirals out of control now because now those regional banks are going to have to, they can't make payroll. So now they're going to have to start laying people off. That's why, like, in the last couple of years, I've been applying for a new job and nobody ever calls me. I've applied at hundreds of jobs and shit. I've been on probably 25, 30, maybe 35 fucking interviews, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
Zoom, physical ones. Oh, yeah, yeah, it sounds good. And I'll always ask, like, oh, is anybody else interviewing for this job? Well, no, not really. Or this position? No, not really. I'm like, well, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
do you need people or not?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was all just a bullshit scam. A lot of companies took those PPP loans. The CEOs paid themselves big fat bonuses.
Yes.
They didn't hire anybody. They
No.
actually fired people and furloughed them or paid out their pensions early. I just saw something with I think it was Ford or GM. GM is paying people early severances now for their pensions or some shit like that. Well, it's similar to the airline pilots and shit like that. Oh, there's a shortage of airline pilots. Well, no shit, dummy. You paid them all to retire early.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you do with all that money that you were supposed to use to keep them? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
we kept it and paid ourselves big bonuses, but we need a scapegoat. Same thing with all of these companies, dude. For the last 2, 3 years, this is where shit's gonna get really, really fucking bad, really, really quick. You got about 6 months though before this is kind of what is the day? 13th? Today's the 13th. This is the
Mm-hmm.
15-year anniversary of Bear Stearns, the fourth or fifth biggest investment bank going bankrupt. Uh, 3 months before Bear Stearns went bankrupt, I think it was three months. They were rated AAA, meaning it's the highest, safest investment there is.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley Bank was rated like A or double A. So they were rated high quality. Well, it just went bust in fucking 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So what it either tells you that they were paying off the regulators or the regulators are a bunch of fucking idiots. Those are the two big regulators right behind you. They all know what's going on, but like I've said, you know, in 2008 it was the Titanic. Well, we sunk and now all the crooks, those two behind you, the government, they all convinced everybody, oh, we're not the Titanic anymore. Now we're a submarine because we're all underwater and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? How does a submarine work? You got to stay buoyant, right? Otherwise, if you start getting air in it or start getting water in it, it's just bitch is just gonna sink right to the bottom. That's
Damn
what's
right,
gonna
Brian.
happen. You got 6 months until shit really hits the fan, and I mean that like literally.
Like, what do we expect to see in 6 months?
Well,
What
in
do you
six
expect
months,
to see?
well, with my understanding of history and psychology and shit like that, is that there's always a crisis in March in the springtime because, like me and my roommate were talking, is that a lot of companies do all their end of the year accounting.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of realize your profits and shit like that, and how can we manipulate the numbers to get through the year, kind of thing. Kick the can down the road long enough for the end of the year, and then we'll figure it out at the beginning of the new year.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was all happening last year. The stock market was down, bonds were down, everything. So somebody's losing a shit ton of money because normally, like I said before, you're either making money in bonds or you're making money in somewhere. But if
Yeah.
everything's falling, you ain't making money in nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got to keep all that shit on your balance sheet on your books. Just no different than, you have a family and stuff.
You gotta balance
Groceries are
what you
going
spend.
Yeah, groceries are going up through the ass, and you only have a certain amount of money coming in, so you got to make some cuts. Where the fuck are
Yeah.
that go? We're not eating
Or
out anymore, right?
or you got to go work at, be a male stripper on weekends,
Yeah, you got to do OnlyFans and shit.
Yeah,
Guess what?
OnlyFans. Yep, yep. You got to do like feet
Feet finder. Yeah,
photos
feet
and
finder.
stuff. Yeah.
I tried that, but I got hobbit feet, so it didn't work out too.
Dog.
I got alligator feet. But same shit goes for a lot of companies. At the end of the year is where you start to at the end of the year, beginning of the new year is where you start to see like who's the companies who have been bullshitting, especially with higher interest rates.
Hmm.
Well, it always happens in March. The dot-com bubble popped in March of 2000. In March of 2008. But previous to this, you can kind of see a lead up domino effect to it where you just start to see like that doesn't make any sense accounting wise. Like that shit don't make no sense. You know?
So does Enron share any similarities
Yeah.
into all of this?
Yeah. Enron, every crisis just keeps getting worse and worse and bigger and bigger. So
I know Enron would pretty much shut down and power back on California's electrical grid
yeah,
system whenever
to
they
rip them
felt.
off and shit. They didn't
Yeah,
care if
yeah.
they in the documentary or not called the smartest guys in the room. Like they literally have emails and guys on phones saying like, "Yeah, we could kill a lot of
I
people, but
remember
fuck them.
seeing
Like I got to
that.
make my
Yeah.
bonus," you know?
Yeah.
So it's peak greed, but essentially we're reached the point where like for the last 20, 30 years, like we're literally killing people for money, but they
Hmm.
justify it as, well, if not me, then who? Right?
Yeah.
So same thing with Enron, WorldCom. WorldCom was worth 100 billion, but it was all fraud. This is where you start to see when they start to raise interest rates. This is where you start to see all the fraud come out.
What about that oh, wasn't it like an Asian billionaire or something that was a fraud that you were telling me about?
Yeah, the guy who's the richest guy in Asia,
Yes,
his
yes,
company went
yes.
bust because like
Yes.
you start to look at the financials and then you start to like because when everybody is making money, nobody wants to look at how you're making the money, right?
Yeah. Well, that's like the
Oh,
main ingredient to the recipe.
right, commit fraud, and then when fraud is revealed, oh, I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
And that's why all the crooks at the top never go to jail because like somebody else was also allowing you to do it because they were piggybacking off of the fraud. And now a lot of politicians were doing it. That's why they don't want to regulate like insider trading and shit, right? You had during COVID, you had a bunch of people selling stocks because they got insider information. Well, I
Hmm.
didn't know that. I called my financial advisor and he told me to do it. Well, who called him? Well, not me. You know? So it's part of the fourth turning where you have so much fraud and it's so blatant, right? Like we talked about before.
That it can't be controlled.
Exactly. And then the chaos just unravels. But as it's unraveling, all that fraud was predicated on ripping off average Americans, average people.
Hmm.
The governments were in on it, the financial institutions were in it, the education system was in on it, the healthcare system was in on it, just ripping everybody off. This is where you're going to have your ancient Roman, the barbarians at the gate. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Where essentially ancient Rome was so corrupt. That's why they had to create gladiators
Oh, they
and
let
shit.
their enemies into the city.
Yep, exactly
Yes.
right. Because when the barbarians showed up, ancient Rome was so corrupt. The politicians used like back then they had
Well,
police,
the people let the barbarians into the city as long as the barbarians didn't hurt the people.
but they slaughtered everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what I said. Like this is your pretty soon you're gonna get your barbarians at the gate where
So civil conflict.
Yeah, it'll be civil conflict, but essentially, this is where I'm getting at. You're going to have a couple of outcomes here where, say, for instance, you know, oh, we keep pissing money away on Ukraine, but like, how can we afford that and bail out all these banks? And at the same
And
time, like, we only have like,
default on our debt.
yeah, and we have that. So how can we keep the system running? Well, essentially can't. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to create an even bigger crisis. We'll try to blame it on China or Russia. And if you're dumb enough to go for it, but they'll have to control the narrative, right?
So essentially, we're on the verge of a pretty much the
They call,
extinction of our current empire,
yeah, they call it
and
a,
the people are going to be in charge of restarting a new empire.
yeah, they call it a Ellie. An Ellie is an extinction level event. Um, it's something that, it could be like a fucking asteroid or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything extinction wise, but um, have you ever seen like that's why you have like secret societies and shit like that? If
Yeah.
you believe in that.
Mm-hmm.
All throughout history, you have like the Knights Templar, the Illuminati,
Mm-hmm.
the United Nations, the League of Nations.
That stuff is very much in existence, Doc.
Right. And that's
Yes.
kind of, you ever seen the movie Batman Begins? Christian
Who's the
Bale.
Batman? Christian Bale? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
come on,
Christian
Doc.
Bale.
Come on.
The whole entire premise of that movie
Best
was
Batman.
essentially
He's the best
the,
Batman.
yeah, he is. The whole
Or
entire
do you like
premise of
Michael Keaton?
I like them all. I even like
I,
Val
I,
Kilmer. I just didn't like George Clooney.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. He's just
I like,
better off being the coffee guy.
yeah, I like the Riddler, Jim Carrey.
Yeah, Jim
But
Carrey.
yeah, but you can kind of look at it like the Christian Bale Batman, where Ra's al Ghul was essentially, he wasn't an eco-terrorist. He was just kind of like Thanos, where he's a leader of the League of Nations. To restore balance, you have to
Hmm.
essentially destroy, so in order to rebuild. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
So there's a scene in Batman Begins where Batman realizes Ra's al Ghul was faking his identity the whole time,
Hmm.
and he explains to him like the League of Shadows has been around for centuries. They started the Chicago fire. They ransacked London, sent plagued rats to Europe. They they create chaos and destruction in order for humanity to pick itself back up and realize like you're grateful for what you have left because you survived kind of
To
mentality.
reinvent itself.
Yeah, but it's just kind of like a natural order. And he says at the end of it, telling Christian Bale, we tried a new system, economics, where Ra's al Ghul is directly responsible for Christian Bale's dad's death because the League of Shadows corrupted all the government officials of Gotham, corrupted all of the police at every sort of channel that they could. And they
Yes.
made it so destitute that one of the people actually shot one of the rich people, shot the
Hmm.
richest guy in the city. Well, that's kind of what you're going to kind of see, in my opinion, through these kind of like, they're going to try to create chaos in order to control it again.
Hmm.
I
You
mean,
want to
that's why,
talk about extinction level events, Doug? You want to go down a rabbit hole? You got to get into the magnetic pole shift.
yeah, that's another one. I mean, I've always had the theory of terraformed America. I don't believe in continental drift. I believe that Earth was terraformed
Hmm.
and that the pyramids are actually nuclear reactors, or they're world engines essentially.
Mm.
So a world engine was first heard of in Superman, Man of Steel,
Yes.
General Zod.
General Zod is awesome. Who
Yeah,
what's the name of the dude that played him again?
Michael Shannon.
Yeah, dude. Michael
Yeah,
Shannon is the man. I thought
piece of shit.
he was a good General Zod.
Yeah, he was, but essentially their world is destroyed, so they had to go to a different world and
Yes.
create their world. It's kind of like with the premise of Transformers, Cybertron and shit.
Yeah.
I think
And
it was
the gravity on their world
a
was
lot
so
stronger.
powerful that when they got to Earth, Earth was like being like walking on like a pillow.
Yeah. So they couldn't adapt to it.
Yeah.
So they had to change the world that they were on now, the new Discover world, to terraform it into their world.
Mm-hmm.
So with the pole shifts, are magnetic and shit like that. But that's kind of like where you're getting into the whole entire Nikola Tesla and the
Mm-hmm.
internal waves of the Earth. The Earth naturally creates energy.
Yeah.
Well, excuse me. My theory is that continental drift has never actually occurred, like with earthquakes. Earthquakes happen and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the ancient pyramids and shit were world engines. That's why they're known around different continents. Like
Yeah.
you have pyramids in China, you have pyramids in Egypt, you have pyramids in Mexico.
Pyramids in South America.
Yeah, correct. So they're like pillars almost, right?
Yeah.
Just it's the same storyline of fucking Transformers: Dark Side of the Moon. The
And
pillars, you
it's
said.
not like, there's no like social media to record, that
Yeah.
that
Well,
nobody talked to each other, from
yeah.
all over the place. But they also say that at one point, before the so-called continental drift, these places were all merged together.
Yeah, Pangea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you also have pyramids in Antarctica too. That's why not a lot of people are allowed to even go to Antarctica. Why? It's fucking dog shit. It's ice. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why are you trying to prevent people from going there? Well, because there's pyramids there. And these pyramids,
Probably
all at
tell
one
more of a
time.
story than what the other ones do.
Yeah. And like Pangea, we all know Pangea was all the continents were together, right? That's why you
Mm-hmm.
can see artifacts of dead animals similar, like, what is it, the east coast of South America. You
Mm-hmm.
can find those same dead animal artifacts on the west coast of Africa because it
Well,
fits like a
that
puzzle
and
piece.
then Native Americans have the resemblance of that of Asians. You
Yeah,
know.
and Egyptians and stuff like that. We're all on one planet, right?
Yep.
And then, or one continent, Pangea. Well, if continental drift, you would have massive volcanoes, which would shoot up so much carbon in the fucking air, it'd pretty much kill all the life force, right?
Yeah.
That was always my one question. Well, like, if Pangea existed, humans had to exist too, because it's kind of like the
Mm.
the land masses were all connected, but at the same time, if they were all connected and humans were all on the same continent, if all
Imagine
those vol-
how imagine how rich the earth would be with
yeah,
vegetation, like
yeah, that's why you saw like
insane, like vegetation on steroids.
yeah, that's why you saw the dinosaurs. You saw gigantic plants and shit because there
Mm-hmm.
was probably carbon monoxide rich.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, where the fuck did all the carbon monoxide come from? It came from all the volcanoes and shit. But
Yes.
if it took that many volcanoes over that long a time, there nothing would be able to survive. No fucking animals. There's all carbon monoxide. We're like oxygen. We need oxygen,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
So that means, in my theory, that it had to take place very, very fast. The terraforming of it, right? You kill off everything, but the world engine will do that. And that's why, like, they've never found the capstone to the Great Pyramid. It was made out of gold, and
Mm.
you had aquifers running along underneath the Great Pyramids.
What was the how big was the capstone to the pyramids?
Ginormous. It was like probably the size of a fucking school bus or something. I don't know. I've never actually seen the Great Pyramid, but it had to be a massive
Now
gold thing.
that would have been on the tippy top of the pyramid.
Yeah, correct.
So you think that? Do you think it could have been maybe a catastrophic flood event that could have,
Like a meltdown?
or like just like a flood? Like a great flood, like
Well,
Noah's Ark, dog.
yeah, it could have possibly been something like that because, I mean, like we've said before, you have the Grand Canyon made through millions of, it's got to be fucking millions of years of water erosion.
Mm-hmm.
But what if the Grand Canyon just opened up like a crater and all the water just rushed in? And then eventually it just evaporated because it got so hot or some shit, you know?
Well, isn't the Grand Canyon wasn't the Grand Canyon formed by the Colorado River?
Yeah, probably a large majority of it.
Yeah.
But it's massive, dude. Like,
Yeah.
the Grand Canyon is fucking massive.
Oh yeah.
But I've come up with this thing where it's kind of like Stargate, the movie Stargate with Kurt
Yeah,
Russell.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so if and they also use this shit in the movie The Avengers too, where if it's a door, doors can either lead in or out. A
Oh,
Stargate.
teleporting, yeah.
Yeah, wormholes or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. Well, they say that they have those in space, then that they've taken pictures of like
Mhm.
wormholes
Well,
in.
kind of like the premise of Stargate and shit. You
Mm-hmm.
had ancient hieroglyphics of the actual Stargate, but there was also another Stargate. It was on Earth or a different galaxy, but it still had the same pyramid,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of like the pyramids are 2 points on a piece of paper,
Mm-hmm.
and the fastest way is a straight line. But if you bend the fucking paper, you're essentially bending time.
Mm-hmm.
So my main point being is that there's not only pyramids here, there's pyramids on other planets
Well,
or
that's
some other planet on a
Interstellar
galaxy.
was like that.
2008, Bear Stearns, March of 2020, COVID. I'm willing to bet this coming fall, shit's really gonna get bad.
March 2023, Silicon Valley Bank.
Signature Bank,
Yeah.
Silvergate. But like I said, next will be either the pension funds will start to go bust, like California, Calipers, because they weren't the only ones who were gorging on all of this. Like I told you before in one of the previous podcasts and shit about why all the pensions are going to go bust.
People will
Like
never be able to retire.
yeah, you won't. And what better way to do a cyber attack from our very own government to wipe out all your savings and then blame China for it?
Mm-hmm.
You have no proof. You can't fucking prove that, but we'll just tell you that. And you're pissed off and so stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You'll go to war for it. Right.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of like a lot of people don't even know. 2021, you could see these dominoes falling. Evergrande, biggest real estate company in China. Uh, Archegos Capital Management, they
Mm-hmm.
went bust. Um, Supply Chain Hedge Fund in Europe went bust called Greensill.
Mm.
You saw,
This is a reminder from Short Chart. Make your bed.
Make your bed, dog. Sorry,
yeah,
7
we gotta make our
o'clock.
bid. But you also saw in October and November, you saw FTX collapse.
Yep.
Make your bed.
You also saw the British pension system go bust.
Make your
Mm-hmm.
bed.
So now I'm saying, like, this is where the American pension system goes bust because somebody's been buying all those treasuries, just like Silicon Valley was buying all these
This is a
treasuries.
reminder from Short
Do you think it
Chart.
was Jeff
Make
Bezos?
your bed.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's why Jeff Bezos is like got houses everywhere and shit because he's gonna be good. That's why all the elites are buying houses and shit in New
South
Zealand.
America?
Yeah, South America, New Zealand. If you want to, if a total collapse is gonna happen, you're gonna want to be isolated.
Mm-hmm. So we go to the Amazon.
No,
I don't want to go to the Amazon. I don't think I'll
fuck
make it a
that.
week there, dude.
I can't even deal with the mosquitoes in fucking Wisconsin.
No, I think the mosquitoes would kill us alone, dog.
Right.
Yeah. Where can they find us, dog?
Well, you can find us on Truth Over Facts podcast at gmail.com. Then you can also find us on Twitter at truth underscore over facts. The Twitter.
Awesome. Have we got any emails at all?
You know what? I haven't checked it because I'm just like, yeah, we'll have to accumulate a couple of them.
Yeah, I doubt it.
But yeah, we'll see how this whole entire banking crisis goes and shit. But I said, like, if you want my personal opinion, I don't give financial advice or anything. But if you ain't got your fucking house in order by the end of August, you're fucked.
Start buying a lot of canned goods. Get a lot
Get a
of
gun.
a lot of filtered water. Get those big, what is it, the 3-gallon water jugs, right? Right,
Yeah,
Dylan? What was like 3
55
gallons?
gallon.
Or 55-gallon, like the ones that you can just grab, and not the 1-gallon like milk jugs, but like the I think they're 3-gallon.
Just
Yeah,
come
the
up
ones
with
you
a
can put in a
plan.
shopping cart. Just you don't have to go and buy all this stuff out at once.
Okay,
You
so
know, just like say you like got all your groceries that you need for the week. Get a couple extra things for storage. To store it up.
get enough stuff that you can carry it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have two options. You can either hunker down and wait for the bullshit to pray to God that it passes over, right?
Yeah.
Or you have 48 hours to literally get to wherever the hell you need to get to. Otherwise, shit's going to go bad.
Get an extra package of toilet paper every time you
Yeah.
go shopping too. You
Get
don't want
enough
to be in that
shit
crisis again.
and come up with a roadmap of where you need to get with the back road by using back roads. Stay off the freeways. Form a little group of trust between a certain amount of friends that you do trust and all come up with the plan. Start utilizing different people's skills. If you know a nurse, maybe inform them. If you know
Buy
somebody with
some MREs. Buy some
yeah.
MREs.
If you know somebody with some medical or some military background, you might want to form an alliance with them or what have you.
Yes. Get a magnetic compass.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing digital. It won't work.
Right. An EMP or some shit like that. If you are scared about an EMP, get a Faraday cage or a Faraday bag.
Mm-hmm.
That way you at least have some radio contact.
Yep.
But yeah, you either got to hunker down, otherwise you essentially, because look at the banks. The banks literally went bust in 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine the whole entire banking system just collapsed in 48 hours, which it just did.
Yeah.
You got
That's
48
crazy.
hours.
Yeah.
So that's like the max you're gonna get. Is 48 hours. And you got to remember, if the banking system collapses, all the gas stations collapse too.
And a lot of these places, a lot of these companies that are taking hits are tech startups,
Mm-hmm. They're tech
It's
startups that don't make any money.
and
This is
they're
kind
they're
of like
supposed to be the future of our new industrial revolution,
right.
and they can't even get off on the right foot.
Yeah. Because essentially the government just nationalized the banks. They said, "Oh, we're going to secure all the deposits." The FDIC doesn't have enough money to
No,
secure all the
not
deposits.
no.
It doesn't. It's just a bullshit excuse to lie to everybody to keep the fucking banks going for another week or two. And then they'll come up with some other bullshit plan. Oh, we're not going to
Doesn't
think
the
about this.
FDIC only have like 200 million in like cap?
200 billion they got, I think.
Oh, 200 billion.
Yeah, but the whole system is like 4 quadrillions. So that's what I mean. Like there is not enough money. This is where the Rubicon is where the government and the Federal Reserve are going to try to tell everybody, oh, well, we need to deal with higher inflation then to bail out all. Think about that. Like, where are we going to get all the money to bail out all these banks right now? Print more.
So where do you think we are in all this? Are we staring at the Rubicon? Have we crossed the Rubicon?
We crossed the Rubicon. Think of it
Oh
as like
shit.
think of it as like a hurricane, right? There's always an
We
eye of the
crossed the
hurricane.
Rubicon into a hurricane.
Well, we're at the back end of a hurricane.
Well,
From
Caesar won this battle though, dog.
yeah,
Caesar won.
we 2008 was the beginning of it, and then we printed a bunch of money to substitute everything to make it look like we were in the eye of the hurricane. In the eye of the hurricane, it's nice and calm, but still a little bit bumpy. And now we're crossed, like, kind of COVID was essentially the getting out of the rest of the hurricane back into the bullshit. And now they're trying to, it's going to keep getting worse.
I'm staring at a hurricane and I see two faces. Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell.
Yeah, but they just said, "Oh, we're not using taxpayer dollars to do all these bailouts." Well, where the fuck are you gonna get the money from?
Yeah.
Okay, so like,
where are you gonna get it from?
if the
You're gonna
Fed's
have to-
balance sheet is
You're
at
gonna have to tell people to start paying back student loans.
yeah, this is where the bail-ins come in.
Hmm.
This is where they're just gonna take your deposits and shit.
You're
But
gonna
at the
have to increase taxes again.
Yeah,
You're
and
gonna
then
have to cut the child tax credit down again.
Yep, and this is where they're gonna have to decide. Okay, this is where we hit hyperinflation, and it will go. Hyperinflation can hit.
And you're gonna have to cut pensions.
Yeah, hyperinflation can hit in literally a couple of fucking days, like, because it's just a buildup, right?
Mhm.
Like I said to begin with and shit. Instead of having a bunch of garbage in a garbage bag, we got a bunch of water in a garbage bag, and all the water's pouring out, and all of a sudden the bottom drops out, and that's how fast hyperinflation can hit.
Did you hear who's that the senator from? I think he's from Louisiana. Is it Robert F. Kennedy or Robert
Yeah, the
Kennedy?
Kennedy guy.
Yeah, or he's all like
Lock
he's
your
like
doors.
yeah, he was mocking like the retirement age or something like that. Saying,
Yeah, they want to raise it.
yeah, fucking idiot, dude.
Well, that's just it. The whole system is a Ponzi scheme.
People are supposed to enjoy their life after,
Well, when
after
you're a
working
crooked
their ass off.
multi-million-dollar politician, you could give two shits about the people
Yeah,
you
he
rip off.
doesn't give a shit. Fuck that guy. He's a piece of shit.
Well, that's what I mean. None of them care anymore at this. This is part of the
They
fourth
don't
turn.
care. They want to burn you. They want to burn you at the stake every chance you get. You
Right.
know, Republican, Democrat, fuck them all.
Yeah, and this is part of the point where they're like, well, people live now until the average age is 77. Well, who the hell can afford health care at that age?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah.
So we're going to make health care unaffordable. You're not going to get no health care, Medicaid or Medicare when you're older. And then you're not going to get any Social Security.
They
but
just had to increase the Social Security payment just so the people could afford the cost of living.
It's all fucked.
Yeah.
And now the curtain's revealed. And it's not no fucking wizard. It's just some short fucking pudgy.
They may sound like they're looking out for your interests on Capitol Hill, but they don't give a shit about your interests.
Nope. Didn't I tell you that? I said it. But like I said, buckle up, buckaroo. It's gonna get real crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think this is gonna do it for our show tonight.
Yeah.
And what do we got? Like almost 2 hours on here, huh, dog?
Yeah, hour and a half.
Yeah,
But
that's
buckle
pretty
up,
good.
everybody.
Yeah.
It's gonna get real colorful.
Yeah, it's a shit show right now.
I just put my bug out bag in my car the other day.
Boy. Yeah. Yeah.
I got two of them, but
that's good. That's good. Be prepared, dog.
Like I said, I think essentially what's going to happen is a fire sale where it's just like in Die Hard, Live Free or Die Hard, the fourth one, where the cyber attack hacker guy has a fire sale. First, they cut transportation down.
Yes.
Then they take out the financial system. and then they take out the utilities.
Mm-hmm.
But the utilities are hardwired into the system. So I think they're just kind of trying to do it in reverse or some shit like that. Because if you're going to invade somebody, you also need to take out the communication systems.
Well, they are already taking out the utilities in California and Texas.
Yeah, and Washington and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're taking those out the utilities, you already don't have to go. That's like the hard part.
Yeah.
The financial system is already collapsing. So it's kind of, you really don't, all you got to really do is take out transportation shit. And that's what I mean is like in the movie, all the lights went green. So everybody just started T-boning each other.
Yeah, they controlled it.
Yeah, everybody just started T-boning everybody in New York and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody was trying to be like, what the hell's going on?
It's almost like with this air traffic controller shit, dude. With the airports, with these planes colliding and shit, or almost colliding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just the whole system is just so dilapidated, like the infrastructure. Like this is like the perfect storm where.
Well, it's like we haven't put money into it because we've been putting money.
We need
into
more Ukrainian infrastructure.
So technology that maybe software updates or training
the whole shit's still running
updates
off
for
of
like
Windows
air traffic
95
controllers.
and
Yeah, we
Napster.
simply took all that funding and gave it to Ukraine.
Yeah, sounds like the ancient Roman Empire, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody have a good night's sleep.
Yep.
I'm
Have a
Dylan.
good night, everybody. I'm Ronnie. Thanks for listening and watching.